Office of Racial Equality was determined to keep the pressure on Kennedy. CORE wanted the president to enforce 2 Supreme Court decisions banning segregated interstate travel. These Supreme Court decisions had been largely ignored throughout the South. In 1961, blacks were still forced to ride in the back of the bus and were shut out of the white-only waiting rooms. The administration had the power to force the southern states to obey the law through the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission. CORE dramatized the need for the government to use that power with a tactic called the Freedom Rides.
We decided the way to do it was to have a group, an interracial group, ride through the South. This was not civil disobedience, really, because we would be doing merely what the Supreme Court said we had a right to do. The whites in the group would sit in the back of the bus, the blacks would sit in the front of the bus and would refuse to move when ordered. At every rest stop, the whites would go into the waiting room for blacks and the blacks into the waiting room for whites, and would seek to use all the facilities, refusing to leave. And we felt that we could then count upon the racists of the South to create a crisis so that the federal government would be compelled to enforce federal law. And that was the rationale for the Freedom Ride.
The Freedom Riders would board 2 buses in Washington, D.C. on May 4th. Their itinerary would take them through the Deep South and on to New Orleans by May 17th, through the Upper South. On Mother's Day, May 14th, 2 buses left Atlanta for Birmingham. Outside of Anniston, a mob firebombed the lead bus and blocked the exits. Twelve riders were hospitalized. The bus was destroyed. The second bus was met in Birmingham by a mob of Klansmen. Freedom Rider Jim Peck took the brunt of the beating.
This is Robert Chackney in Birmingham, at the home of a Negro clergyman. And with me are part of a group calling themselves the Freedom Riders, an interracial group traveling through the Deep South to challenge some of the segregated bus facilities in this part of the country. Yesterday they ran into trouble. They ran into violence. Today they say they intend to keep up their pilgrimage. Mr. Peck, you obviously have been injured. You're wearing bandages. What happened to you?
I got beaten twice yesterday by hoodlums, once aboard the bus and once in the terminal in Birmingham.
We can't act as nursemaids to agitators. I think when they learn that that when they go somewhere to create a riot, that there's not going to be somebody there to stand between them and the other crowd, they'll stay home. That's been my experience with this type of individual. You see, they're always seeking the help of the police to protect them, but they are the first to criticize the police when the police are unable to protect them. And you just can't guarantee the safety of a fool, and that's what these folks are, just fools.
We had hoped that there would be protection. Indeed, that was one of the reasons that I sent a letter to the FBI. We had thought that the FBI would provide protection for us, would see to it at each stop that we were not brutalized or killed. But that did not happen.
It appeared the Freedom Ride was over. But the SNCC students from Nashville decided the ride must continue.
You know, if the Freedom Ride had been stopped as a result of violence, I strongly felt that the future of the movement was going to be just cut short, because the impression would have been given that whenever a movement starts, all that has to be done is that you attack it with massive violence, and the the blacks would stop.
It was at that point, after the SNCC students from Nashville went into Birmingham, that Bobby Kennedy, the Attorney General, became really involved in it. Drivers walked off the job and would not drive the bus. And Kennedy got on the phone and called down to the bus terminal demanding that they find a driver. "Where is Mr. Greyhound?" he stormed.
May 20th, the new contingent of 21 Freedom Riders received word that Alabama would protect them.
8:30 Saturday morning, we understood that an arrangement had been worked out where between the Justice Department and the officials of Greyhound and the officials of the state of Alabama, where we would board the bus with other customers or passengers, and there would be 2 officials of Greyhound. A private plane would fly over the bus. There would be a state patrol car every 15 or 20 miles along the highway between Birmingham and Montgomery, about 90 miles. We got on the bus, and a great many of the riders really literally took a nap. They went to sleep. I took a seat on the front seat right behind the driver with a young man by the name of Jim Spur, a young white guy. I was a spokesman for this particular group of riders. And we did see the plane, but I would say about 40 miles or less from the city of Montgomery, all sign of protection disappeared. There was no plane, no patrol car. And when we arrived at the bus station, it was just an eerie, just a strange feeling. It was so quiet, so peaceful, nothing. And then all of a sudden, just like whoosh, magic, white people, sticks and bricks, nigger, kill the niggers. We were still on the bus, you know, but I think we all kind of decided, well, maybe we should go off the back of this bus, because we kind of knew that if we had gone off the back of the bus, that maybe they wouldn't be so bad on us. They wanted us to go off the back of the bus. And we decided, no, we'll go off the front and take what's coming to us. We went off the front of the bus. Jim Swery was a white fellow from Madison, Wisconsin. He had a lot of nerve. And I think that's what saved me, Bernard Lafayette, Alan Kaysen, because Jim Swery walked off the bus in front of us. And they were so, it was like they were possessed, because they couldn't believe that there was a white man who would help us. And they grabbed him and pulled him into the mob. I mean, it was a mob. When we came off the bus, they were so, their attention was on him. It's like they didn't see the rest of us. For like about maybe 30 seconds, they didn't see us. They didn't see us at all. And we were hemmed up by this rail. There's a rail right there at the bus station. Parking lot down below. Cars down there. And then when they did turn toward us, we had a choice. About 10 or 15 feet below. We could stand there and take it, or we could go over the rail. Over the rail we went. Me and Bernard Lafayette. Alan Kaysen always carried his little typewriter. Always had his typewriter. Over the rail he went. On top of a car. Hit the ground. Took off. Ran into the back of this building. It was the post office. And the people were in there carrying on the business of just like nothing was happening outside. But when we came through that, and our mail went to flying everywhere because we were running.
As I drove along, I saw 2 young women who were Freedom Riders being pummeled to one side. There was a woman who was walking along behind one of these young women. She had a purse on a strap, and she was beating her over the head. And a young, skinny, blonde teenager in a T-shirt was sort of dancing her backward in front of her, punching her in the face. Instinctively, I just bumped up onto the sidewalk, blew the horn, jumped out of the car, came around, grabbed the one who was being hit, took her back to the car. The other young woman got in the back seat of the car, and I opened the door, pushed this young woman whose name I think was Susan Wilbur, and said, "Get in the car." And she said, "Mister, this is not your fight. I'm nonviolent. Don't get hurt because of me." I almost got away with it. If she'd gotten into the car, I think I could have gotten away. But that moment of hesitation gave the mob a chance to collect their wits. And one grabbed me by the arm, wheeled me around, and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, "Get back, I'm a federal man," turned back to her, and the lights went out. I was hit with a pipe over this ear.
We heard the news about Jim Swerve, about John Lewis, about William Barbee. William Barbee was damaged for life, really. Jim Swerve for life. It's amazing that they're still living. They could have been killed.
Segregation must be stopped. It must be broken down. Those of us who are on the Freedom Ride, we will continue the Freedom Ride. I'm not sure that I'll be able to, but we're going on to New Orleans, no matter what happens. We're dedicated to this. We'll take hitting, we'll take beating. We're willing to accept death. But we're going to keep coming until we can ride from anywhere in the South to any place else in the South without anybody making any comments, just as American citizens.
I'm taking a ride on the Greyhound bus line. I'm riding the front seat to Jackson this time. Hallelujah, I'm a traveling. Hallelujah, ain't it fine? Hallelujah, I'm a traveling on freedom's main line.
In Jackson, there was only police. Outside the terminal, inside the terminal. As we walked through, the police just said, "Keep moving." They let us go through the white side. We never got to stop, you know. They just said, "Keep moving." And they passed us right on through the white terminal into the paddy wagon and into jail. There was no violence in Mississippi.
Attorney General Robert Kennedy had made a deal with Mississippi authorities. He would not enforce the Supreme Court decision giving the riders the right to use any public area in the bus station. In return, Mississippi would make sure there was no violence. Kennedy avoided bloodshed, but by giving in to Mississippi segregation laws, he put the Freedom Riders at the mercy of the local police and local judges.
The next day after we were arrested in Jackson, we went to court. Prosecutor got up, accused us of trespassing, took his seat. Our attorney, Jack Young, got up to defend us as human beings having the right.
You're under arrest. Get their name.
That same summer, Robert Kennedy petitioned the Interstate Commerce Commission to issue regulations banning segregation in interstate travel. In late September, the commission complied. The students had won their victory, and they had become a major force in America's civil rights movement, experienced in direct action and its consequences.
We deal with violence every day in the South. They didn't treat us like we were human. They treated us like vicious animals. Like they were always on guard, thinking that we're gonna do something to them while they were doing it to us.
When I came to Nashville in 1960, I immediately sought out the people in the Civil Rights Movement. When I first went to the meeting, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Bernard Lafayette got up and said that we would defeat this evil system of segregation with nonviolence and passive resistance. I had never heard of passive resistance. I knew violence because you're raised to be violent. You know, if your mom and your daddy tells you somebody hit you, you hit them back.
I did not grow up being nonviolent. I had a very short fuse. It was very obvious to me that segregation was wrong. I had been raised in the church. My parents had taught me right from wrong, and I wanted to do something. I just wasn't sure whether I could be nonviolent.
I believed in protecting myself. And so to be now told that somebody's going to slap me or spit on me or throw water on me and I'm not to do anything about it is against my human nature. So I had to understand why I had to certainly not give in to that impulse to defend myself.
May I have a cup of coffee, please?
Now, look, I don't want any niggers in here. I don't.
Nigger, what are you doing in here? Don't you know?
The training that we did in Washington, D.C. prior to the time the black writers got on the buses was largely devoted to trying to see how the person is going to react.
Are you with this fella?
Why, yes. We're both interstate bus passengers.
Where are you from?
I'm from the United States.
The requirement for nonviolence was not that they believed in nonviolence. It was simply that they acted in a nonviolent way.
I wanted so bad to be a part of the movement because I hated segregation so much. I wanted to help change the system. I decided to go along with the program. So I joined the nonviolent movement.
It's remarkable that during the rides themselves, they remained nonviolent. There was an absolute ability to control themselves.
I did not believe in nonviolence, but it worked. We had to do it this way because we needed the sympathy of good-hearted white people who were on the fence, so to speak. And we needed the participation of whites. And when you see a black person being set upon by 4 or 5 whites, and this person isn't fighting back, it is easier to sympathize with that black person. If we had fought back, many of us would have been killed. And the small reservoir of sympathy that we would have had for whites standing on the sideline would have vanished.
This nonviolence thing fascinated people. The reality that it could bring about change and constructive change, to me, is what really was the difference and the ultimate impact of the Freedom Rides.
They understood that the only way it could be done in America is through peaceful methods. And the Freedom Rides illustrated that. The people who got beaten did not strike back. The people who got beaten did not have weapons with them. It was just a stroke of genius.